What about fireworks? It's like, oh, that's different.
I got 6:30.
I have 6:20, so well.
There we go. All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our regular council meeting for Monday, August the 24th. Before we get started, if you are able, I would ask you to stand and join us for our national anthem. I'd like to begin by respectfully acknowledging that the town of Shelburne resides in the traditional territory and the ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe, including the Ojibwe, Potawatomi, Chippewa, and the people of the Three Fires Confederacy. These traditional territories upon which we live, work, play, and learn are steeped in rich Indigenous history and traditions, and it is with this statement that we'll declare to honor and respect past and present connection of Indigenous peoples with this land, its waterways, and resources. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary area interests in the council tonight? Okay. On to our minutes from the July 13th council meeting. Can I have a motion to adopt those minutes as circulated? Moved by Councillor Shardy, seconded by Councillor Sample. Discussion on those? All in favor? It's carried. All right, so the first item this evening is our planning public meeting. And tonight's public meeting is being held under Section 34 of the Planning Act, and it is to consider an application for a zoning bylaw amendment for the land known municipally as 712 Main Street East in the town of Shelburne. Purpose and effect of the amendment is to add a site-specific provision to permit a private school on the subject property, whereas the current zoning bylaw did not permit this use in the C3 zone. I'll now ask the clerk to provide method of notice for tonight's meeting.
Notice of tonight's public meeting is advertised in local media sources. Notice has been posted on the town's website. Notice was provided to property owners and subject.
Great, thank you. So as we normally do in these cases, we'll have a presentation from the town planner, following which there will be an opportunity for members of the public as well as members of council to ask questions or provide comments. And the clerk will also submit written submissions. Any submissions that are received, whether written or oral here this evening, will be given consideration by council prior to any decision being made. So with that, Steve, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor Mills, and all the details of this application are in my report in the agenda package. Just to summarize those and go over the comments received, I've got a few slides which are on the screen. We also have representatives for this application at Bloom joining us either online or in the room. Nolan Bentley, the DNH Architects, and Sarah Milo for the proposed private school. So the applicant was filed on behalf of the current owner of the property by DNH Architects. As the mayor mentioned, it's for 712 Street East. Go to the next slide. It just shows the location. People are familiar with this. The site to the east is just under construction for some fast food development and some retail space. This site sits on the south edge of the industrial commercial area along Centennial Road and Industrial Road to the north. And the land to the south is vacant with some residential homes further to the southwest and to the west. Well-established commercial area, although some transitions of new development and certainly some additional development opportunities for the future. The building itself has had a history of different uses, originally constructed, I think, for insurance office purposes, with Upper Mutual Insurance there for many years, followed by some medical and pharmacy uses. There was a site plan application about 3 or 4 years ago for some renovations of the basement for additional medical purposes, but that was never finalized. The medical uses have since relocated and the space has become available. And those uses for a private school. So if you go to the next slide, these are just a couple of street view images showing the existing building. It does have a shared access driveway with those developing commercial uses to the east. On the north side of the highway, that is in the MTO control portion of the highway. So this change in use is being reviewed by the Ministry of Transportation, and they have provided some comments that I'll summarize later in the presentation. And the left-hand image just shows a part of the front parking area, as well as the access ramp for accessibility into the building. Go to the next slide. So I have a bit more details on another slide about the details of the proposed private school, but suffice it to say that the applicant is identifying it would be entirely located within the existing building, and there wouldn't be other uses within the building, would this be private school. There are 3 levels within the building. The basement is mainly unfinished. The main floor would be a combination of classrooms and office and support rooms, and the upper floor would be primarily classrooms as well, and some additional support spaces. We've listed here, based on the floor plans that we received through the application, the details of all of the rooms, which are also further detailed in my report. There is some venting proposed, and I have a copy of the site plan in the slideshow as well, just to ensure that once the children are waiting to come into school, or when they're released at the end of the day, that they aren't they understand the limits of the property and aren't able to wander onto any adjoining properties. And that was specifically proposed in response to one of the comments that we received from a nearby industrial landowner. And next slide. So you can see the property location again here with the zoning map. The existing zoning for this property and the properties nearby is service commercial C3, which permits a broad range of uses. It doesn't specifically permit private school, though it does permit things like a commercial school. So there was a bit of interpretation of the bylaw required and some discussion with the applicant to determine which definition of the bylaw this falls under. A private school, the distinction is that it's mainly for academic purposes, essentially similar to a public school for children, versus a commercial school is more along the lines of could be a piano studio or something that is not necessarily all day with many different classrooms and specific academic teaching curriculum, but more oriented to specialized commercial learning opportunities. And the zoning bylaw, as I say, only permitted the commercial school and doesn't permit a public school or a private school currently. So the request is just to add to that list of permitted uses to permit private school. I would say too that is a distinction provincially, and I'll get into this in another slide, but for example, the regulations that govern cannabis retailing, they aren't required to be buffered a certain distance from things like piano studios and commercially run schools of that type, but they are for K-8 private public schools. So that is one of the considerations for this application. The next slide. So the specific proposed school use is By Design Learning Center, or BDLC. They have a site currently east of Orangeville, and are looking to relocate to the building specifically because it's better suited to their operations. The overall interior space is well suited, as identified by the applicant. The location as well is desirable in terms of meeting local needs within Shelburne and its immediate surroundings. And you'll see attached in my report, there's a letter from the applicant that provides some of the indicators of demand. Why there is no similar, private school within town currently. So this would be the first of its kind to serve those types of needs. We asked specifically about transportation, just given the location. There are some difficulties that have been identified in previous studies with MTO. When we looked at that Shelburne East area, traffic flows and growing traffic at the intersection of Highway 89 and County Road 124. It is a full move access, that mutual driveway that's shared among those properties. But could be challenging to be used on a daily basis by a school bus, which obviously requires a bit more time to navigate turns. And there were some safety considerations as well if kids are being picked up or dropped off in the bus in front of that property. However, that's not the case. The applicant confirmed that there would be no school provided transportation, it would be strictly parents and guardians dropping off and picking up kids. The MTO has requested more information, including a bit of a traffic brief to look at that, just to understand better the volume of cars that would be going in and out. However, from our assessment, we feel it would be very similar to the past uses, just based on the number of classrooms and number of kids that could accommodate the number of staff. In fact, it might even be a bit less. If you took, for example, the parking requirement under the zoning bylaw, the number of classrooms identified, and the zoning requirement is 1.5 spaces per classroom. Only 14 spaces are required, and there's actually 38 spaces on site. So the site itself could accommodate a much more intensive car-oriented use in terms of its space and its number of parking spaces provided. As mentioned, this would be a K-8 school. There are 9 classrooms then identified in plans provided. And the capacities range from the kindergarten room, which is the highest, which makes sense if you're going to start kids into a private school. You start at a very early age in the first grade that they enter. And then the grade 1 to grade 8 classrooms are smaller, having a smaller number of students. Go to the next slide. This is the site plan provided as prepared by D&H Architects. I've just highlighted in red, really the only change that's proposed is to put that fencing in, and that was added after the original submission. So the plan that's attached to my report actually didn't show that. Again, in response to some comments from an industrial landowner to the north, this would just make absolutely sure that there's no way for students to wander off the property onto the commercial properties on either side or the industrial properties to the north. But with that said, the outdoor is proposed to remain as is. There's no new outdoor play areas proposed to be added or outdoor learning areas. So really the only time the kids would be outside is during those drop off and pick up times. So in the morning and this drawing also shows where the existing parking is located. There's more parking spaces actually delineated on the site than what are shown here. They can wrap all the way around the building. But this is just illustrating how it meets the parking requirement outside of that fenced area. Go to the next slide. So just circling back to the Ministry of Transportation review of this, they did not object to the approval of the zoning application. In fact, they have their own approval mechanism. So even if council were to approve the zoning tonight, that doesn't alleviate the applicant's responsibility to meet the MTO requirements and obtain whatever permissions the MTO may require under the Public Highway and Transportation Improvement Act. So again, the MTO did request a bit more information about the traffic circulation. The applicant has identified that they will provide that information and is working on that. And just a bit more information requested by MTO as well to show the specific site circulation plan. So where would the students be dropped off? Where would they be picked up? And I think the thing that MTO is most interested in is how much queuing space is then provided, similar to when the drive-throughs were being planned on the site to the east. They just need to make sure that there's not going to be a line of cars that backs up and interferes with the traffic on the highway. And from our review, there's plenty of room on the site and in the driveways to accommodate that. There is a traffic assessment intake form that was specifically required by MTO as well, and that has been completed by the applicant, or it will be submitted by the applicant. Next slide. So again, I mentioned that in the landowner to the north, so specifically Shelburne Memorials at 709 Industrial Road had some questions about the compatibility of the use with the industrial area, and the comments were more about access and making sure that people can't move from the edges of the property onto adjoining property where there could be safety concerns with respect to trucking and industrial activity, but also to do with noise. And this was studied to some degree when the residential subdivision at 600 Main Street was planned, and there were noise studies. And what that found is that the uses that are in the surrounding vicinity in the commercial industrial area on Centennial and Industrial actually don't generate a lot of exterior noise. It's a lighter industrial area, and nothing that requires specific noise mitigation in that case. We also responded to this landowner just to indicate that everything would be inside the building again. So if there are noise sensitivities, it wouldn't relate to any outdoor use. In the next slide. We received this comment today just from the former tenant of the building who had expressed to staff and I think to council previously some of the concerns about the conditions within the building. In this case, that was identified as part of the pre-consultation where the owner was present for the meeting, and they were identifying that they would make sure that everything is compliant with the required codes and safety measures. This would be obviously a requirement through the county building department. We have made them aware and shared with them the prior concerns as well, just to ensure that there's proper inspection mechanisms to ensure that everything is safe. But ultimately, it is up to the school operator and for the owner to work together to ensure everything is safe and in good working order for the students, and certainly for this type of use that will be a critical element of having kids safely accommodated and parents satisfied that that's the case. Don't get into the details of the issues that are identified here. There's quite a list of them, but those have been relayed and shared with the applicants. And as I mentioned at the beginning, the applicant is an architect, so they're aware of the requirements and ensure this complies with all code requirements. Next slide. I mentioned this at the beginning, but back a few years ago when the legislation was proposed to require licensing for cannabis retailing, one of the requirements of those regulations was that new cannabis retail operations could not be located within 150 meters of the school. And again, that covers both private and public schools. So we did this map at that time to illustrate the 150 meter buffer around the existing schools. What's shown here is that by introducing a private school as a permitted and active use on this property would extend the Centennial Highlands buffer a little bit further north, including covering properties, one of which already has a cannabis retail operation. So we dug into the mechanics of that. The buffer doesn't operate to displace an existing cannabis retail operation. They can continue there. But we did make that owner aware that if that cannabis retail operation were to cease operation, the private school is active when they try to reestablish or the operator comes in, that would be the implication, is that they can no longer meet 150% back. The town, other than mapping this out, doesn't have any regulatory role or say in any of this. Those are just provincial requirements, and they use them to establish who can get a license and who can't. Just for the purposes of illustration on this map, we did identify that there's 4 existing locations with the red dots in town, and only the one is within a 150 meter zone that would result from this change in the permitted uses. The next slide. Okay, so just to wrap up with a few next steps, tonight we're obviously here to receive any comments and questions from the council and the public and do our best to respond to that. You'll see the recommendation in our report is to, subject to those comments and questions, give consideration to enacting the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. The bylaw is included in the agenda package as number 31-2026. Very straightforward bylaw, again, just adds private school as a permitted use. Following that, once council makes a decision with respect to the application, there's a notice of decision that goes out to a list of agencies that everybody has provided comments. That notice has to go out within 15 days of the decision. Following that, from the date of notice, there's a 20-day appeal period. Only specified persons under the Planning Act can appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal. I won't go through that, it's a lengthy list, but that would be something that would be reviewed in the event of an appeal. As I mentioned, the applicant is responsible to ensure that MTO requirements are addressed, and then ultimately final approval will be available, subject to there being no appeals, and it's obviously subject to a favorable decision from council. Following the final approval and the MTO approvals, at that time, a municipal approval building permit can then be issued for the interior renovations, and if there's a signage to go on the building or elsewhere, sign permit to ensure compliance with the municipal sign bylaw would be required as well. So that's my report, and I'll pause here for any questions or comments.
Great, thanks, Steve. Because the applicants are here, I'll give you sort of first opportunity if you want to offer any comments. No pressure, but if you do, those are certainly more than welcome.
Sure, I'm Sarah Maya, and I thought I'd pack the house.
Into the overflow room.
Yeah, we're over the theater. So this is my father, Bob, and Satish is the owner. We're like a joint venture with the school. This is my husband, Mark, and he's the actual principal of the school and the formal educator. And these are two of our 4 children. They're my daughters. And this is the professional Nolan with Dickinson and Hicks, so he can add comment. But just a couple things. Thank you, Steve, for your report. Since our application, because it's really tricky. I'm confined by a school year, as you can appreciate, and ideally, I would have started this in January and given myself lots of time. But I didn't know about the space. Satish did not put it on the market, and it's through a great series of events that we were able to connect. And it wasn't until June. So we're working as quickly as we can. And part of the trouble is ideally we want to start a school year in September at this location. That's not going to happen. But the sooner we can do it, the better for routines and for ease of families and staff. So we were putting in the application as quickly as we can, and I just wanted to make mention, Steve, to your report, one of the things we have partnered with the Stream, who I think you're all familiar with. They have such a great reputation here in town, but they would assist us in the before and after school program. And that's an important piece to our school, and it actually becomes quite helpful in addressing the concerns of the MTO, because not all our students arrive at one time and not all depart at one time. And lots of children need care outside the strict school hours. And because of that partnership, we had the opportunity to use a 10-seater passenger van. So while you said there's no transportation provided by the school, probably initially we would be, especially assisting families who have come from south part of the county, like maybe Orangeville area, we could bring up 10 students. Again, very helpful in addressing concerns raised by the MTO. So that was just one little thought. I just thought, oh, that's new information, and I forget just the schedule of all the information we went through. I don't know if there's more, but I defer.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's too much more. I think Steve's report is very comprehensive. We are asking for a private school designation to be added to C3 that already has a commercial school. Yeah, we for that.
Andrew. Hi, welcome. Thanks, Steve, for his presentation. You had mentioned preschool and after-school programs and partnering streams. Are you considering also at some point in time daycare in the future? This is not going to have a daycare whatsoever.
No.
Strictly be.
It would be JK, because they're young.
Right.
But yeah, daycares are a whole new, they're a whole different.
Different animal. No, I
Yeah,
understand.
so
That's why I asked. And I mean, you know, like, I mean, Streams has an excellent reputation as well for their programs. Are you partnering with Streams in terms of content, or is it going to be two separate entities technically within the building?
Great question. So yeah, the fun for Mark and I this summer has been to just see the alignment with Andrew and Julie
Right.
in programming, but actually our values align. So they have 5 values, we have 3, and 3 of them are the same.
Okay.
So that's exciting. And our learning model for By Design Learning Center, if you were curious, and I think it might be in the report, we have a partnership also with Masters Academy, which is based out of Alberta, and they coined the phrase profound learning. So our desire is that kids are engaged in learning. A lot of kids go to school and by grade 1 or 2, like, I have to go to school. But when they were 3 or 4, they were really excited about letters and numbers, and that kind of breaks my heart as a mom. So profound learning is a bit more hands-on, and smaller class sizes are a part of it. But that actually is a perfect fit with the streams, which is, you know, like activities and opportunities and hands-on and the art and yeah, being busy.
Retired teacher.
Oh, good. You know.
I get it, that's why, okay. Okay, thanks. I just curious as to what, if there were 2 separate entities or if it was going to be like a collaboration between the 2.
Yeah, we will run our program, in which, you know, kind of starts at 9, yes, and goes to 3:15. But we will overlap, like Andrew and Julianne, we've already talked about shared programming on Friday afternoons. Field trips, some of their staff helping us at times, and we have very artistic staff as well, so they'll visit the streams, yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for me, I think it's a great idea. I am glad, that you mentioned, because I was obviously gonna bring up the new concerns brought forward with regards to the condition of the building. So I am happy that you're going to be engaging county in order to have, you know, inspections and whatnot, and make sure that we pass. We don't want mold, we don't, you know, we want a functioning proper elevator, things of that nature. So that's great, because that was gonna be one of my questions, like, what are you doing to do that? So I'm glad that that's being held. So no playground outside or a gym. What would you, I mean, I understand that art is great and we don't wanna force, you know, sports on kids or anything, but we know a 4-year-old has a lot of energy, right? So I'm just worried that, you know, recess and things like that should happen. Obviously, we want outdoor time, right? So is there a plan for sort of like a bit of a playground eventually, or is the basement gonna kind of be a gym? You know, something to just let them let loose a bit.
Absolutely, kids have energy, and I wasn't aware that there's like no kids inside. We will have this fenced in area, and we might do staggered recess. I actually, Steve, in your report, the noise, like that was all new to me. I hadn't heard that before, so I apologize. But like we are a small school right now. We have maybe 35 students. Yeah, numbers change a lot this time of year. We hope to grow, but we'll never, like, it'll be around 80 students. That's what we see as a good fit for the building and the space. So we in the site plan that Steve put up, it shows fencing, and the fencing, we have a dream of this really nice looking composite fencing around the perimeter. I don't want balls going into the drive-through lane.
Yeah.
Cause right now there's a drive-through lane, and that, I think that would be a terrible shock to the guy at Taco Bell, so. Then I also don't want balls going to the garage behind us, and I'll be the one, or Mark, going to get all the balls. And so that could get exhausting, so that's a consideration, and maybe we put a net. I know 7 feet is the height of a fence for Shelburne right now. So that's the perimeter, but then across the parking lot, you'll see we have fencing, and the green space directly beside the
Yes,
building.
yeah,
Which we actually would like to put, like artificial turf. It's just destroyed grass and mud becomes a real issue. But it looks nice. We want this to look great.
yeah,
It's a private school, people have a standard
Of
and
course.
we want to deliver. But the fencing would be sort of in your mind, if you could picture like black picket fencing. Not with the spikes, cause that's dangerous, but a nice top, but the gates would open, so a vehicle could still drive around without any trouble. So in the enclosed fence area, we've been looking at products to have courts. There's no need for a playground structure when there's two beautiful parks very close by, Fiddle Park and Greenwood Park. But we would have, Foursquare, big head,
okay,
basketball nets.
Yep.
Again, we're not big, so yeah, and the basement would be, it's a perfect area for energy and kids on rainy days, and even with the streams, they do a lot of productions. I think they did one not too long ago, Judy B. Jones, and they need places to do choreography and dance, and so it's an open basement, but to facilitate groups to be able to use that would be the plan.
perfect, okay, yeah, cause that was just my only concern, I was kinda like, but I was like, all teaching is inside, and I'm like, oh my gosh, is this a prison? Like, what is going on here, right? So I'm actually glad to hear that there will be children outside. I think unless I'm wrong, Steve, with the, relation or whatnot to sound, I think it was more that maybe the memorial was worried that they would be too loud for the
Yeah.
pool.
That's right.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought, so not that the kids are gonna be, yeah, cause you were kinda like, oh no, I don't really know, it's not that the kids are gonna be too loud, it's that they would be too loud for the learning happening in the school, so, which I don't think they would, so,
Yeah,
Yeah.
we didn't have any information that from prior noise studies
Yeah.
that there was any perceptible noise from their operations, those were a bit surprised to hear.
Yeah, I
Indicate that
have-
that's,
I drive by there, I never hear
Yeah.
it, so
yeah.
I would assume that that's an
Yeah.
issue, so, and I mean, a couple of kids laughing, that's a good sound, so.
I think the most noise in that area, maybe the outdoor vacuum cleaner.
Yeah, the car wash, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
So is it the intention to share space with streams eventually?
Yeah, like it's a perfect fit because our programming, like I said 9, after there at 8:30, and we're there till at least 3:30 or 4. And the streams could offer the before school programming starting at 7:30, and then they go in a little bit later. But it's a great fit because they also run like a camp at March break or summer camps, and we don't have use of the building then.
Right.
So we've had a lot of negotiations with them, but just about, is it best to give you this half of the floor, like that's all yours and this is ours, but actually we've come to see, no, we wanna share, we'll have a couple locked up closets. But actually we do similar activities and we're pretty excited.
So
I
it's
actually
made
could have
great.
pictured
Yeah.
more perfect, I didn't know people like them existed, I'm so excited about that.
We're lucky to have them.
Yeah, it like and their heart for the community. So they had a dream of maybe starting a school because they saw a need. And we're not against public schools, Mark's got his foot in the door in the public education, but just options are good for families. And so the gift is, they don't have to start school, we'll come alongside and they assist us, because we've been asked to do day camps and I don't wanna do day camps, so this is a good fit.
Perfect, perfect.
Any other questions from council? Any questions from the public who aren't in the room? They can hear? No? No, okay, all right. Well, to your point, I think for a growing community and providing more options for families to consider is always a good thing, so I'm certainly very supportive of this, and we also do. Anybody wanna go ahead and make a motion? By Councilor Wagner, second by Mr. Kishardi. All right, so the motion will read, be it resolved the council receive report P 2026-11 as information, and that bylaw 31-2026 being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw 38-2007 as amended by rezoning the land known municipally as 712 Main Street East as described legally as Part 1, Concession 2 Old Survey, subject to right-of-way over Parts 1 to 4 on Reference Plan 7R 4051, Town of Shelburne, County of Dufferin, from Service Commercial C3 Zone to Service Commercial Exception, which will now be C3-2 Zone, as shown on Schedule A1 to the bylaw, to be read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed. Any final discussion? All in favor? Carried. Congratulations. So good luck with the rest of the process. I know there's still some other hurdles to overcome,
We'll
but
have an opening. You're all excited.
good. Look forward to it.
Grateful.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for choosing Shelburne.
Yeah.
This is good.
Yes. So is there an organization?
Yeah.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is public question period. Are there any questions from anybody? No, and nothing is submitted. Okay, excellent. Okay, so we can roll right into our presentation then. So happy to introduce Shannon Grady, the CEO of our library. And I think you brought some support with you, which is good. So anyways, welcome to the hot seat, such as it is. I promise Shannon it's a friendly audience. Yeah, let Alice get your presentation up there, and I'll turn it over to you.
Getting that loaded for us. I'm Lara Milton. I'm the new CEO of the Shelburne Public Library. So I've been in the role for about 10 months now, but I'm still going to use new for a little while longer.
Stretch it out as long as you can.
Yeah. And it's been a pleasure getting to know the residents and town staff as we begin to work closely together to serve the community. So today my goals are to highlight the breadth of library services, share the economic benefit of our services and the social return on investment, and then present a glimpse of our goals for the future. And I'm going to start by showing a video demonstrating the impact of what we offer.
We're at the library every week, every single week, whether it's school time or during summer.
You meet so many interesting people, every demographic, families, the moms with the babies on the hips. You know, there's videos, there's programs, there's books.
You can use the computers here for whatever you need. There's also passes that let you go to places like the ROM and Island Lake. The staff that work here, they're kind, helpful.
They really do take the time to invest in individuals. They always found a way to personalize my experience, my children's experience.
They're amazing.
The Shelburne Public Library is a place where possibilities begin. It's a place where a child's curiosity becomes a lifelong love of learning, where ideas become innovations, where neighbors become friends, where everyone is welcome and everyone belongs. We like to say that books are just the beginning of all we offer. From internet access, work and study space, passes to places like museums and parks, programs and events for all ages, the Shelburne Public Library is a place of discovery, creativity, opportunity, and connection.
Combating isolation as you get older, I think, is huge. And a program like this reaches out to the community, and I see the library as reaching out to all aspects of community. Get Crafty program, we have it on Tuesday afternoons from 1 till 3:30. It's very social. We encourage people to come even if they're not going to craft. Get out of the house and, come in, enjoy.
Some programs that I have attended at the Shelburne Public Library are Junior Librarians, Lego Club, Book Club, Bingo, and the Teen Advisory Board that they host. It's fun. I get to interact with other kids my age, and I get to help my public library.
Our impact reaches far beyond our walls. Every investment in the library delivers lasting returns, a more informed community, a stronger local economy, more equitable access to opportunity, healthier and more connected residents, and a higher quality of life for all.
So I approached the library in regards to setting up a literacy program, and they welcomed my idea with open arms, and we were able to work with families in the Shelburne area who needed support. And now that I work with seniors in the community, I really advocate for not only the library, for them to come into the library, but for what the library can do for them, the services that are available here.
Programs in the library during the summer club, they're completely free. They have all the materials that they need here to do whatever crafting or whatever activity, and everything is provided by the library.
To me, the best kept secret of the library is it's free. I mean, other than if you're going to use a service like faxing or something like that. It's your tax dollar at work for you.
It's super easy to make friends here. Everybody's kind, respectful, and easy to talk to. I have learned better cooperation, better teamwork, and better leadership. I've just become a better person in general by coming to the clubs here.
The friendly faces, welcoming smiles.
It's more like a family, and that is a beautiful feeling.
The Shelburne Public Library isn't just a place to visit, it's an investment in our shared future.
A-minus. A-minus.
So for some context for the video, I reached out to community members and patrons of ours to see if they'd be willing to go on camera and just share a little bit about the impact that the library has on them. And the videographers advised that I do not give them interview questions in advance because it makes them nervous, and then they'll talk to a script and it won't be as candid. So they did all of that candidly. I wasn't in the room for their conversation, so everything they said was a surprise to me when I got to see the first round of the video. So it was pretty special to hear the impact stories. Very cool. Next slide. So I was hoping in the video to show you that Shelburne Public Library is a place where possibilities begin. And a core part of our service is programming for all ages. So in order to enhance our program delivery beyond our staff capacity, a big part of what we do in libraries and at the Shelburne Public Library is to develop strategic partnerships with residents, businesses, governments, and community-based organizations. Whether it's providing these partners with space to deliver programs that are mutually beneficial to both of our strategic plans, or working together to achieve our shared goals. So this year, due to a slight restructuring of our team and some new community partnerships that we were able to develop, we increased our program offerings by 42%, and this is just January to June, so comparing that time period to last year's. And as a result, we saw a 70% increase in attendance. So already this year, we've had over 3,800 people attend 183 programs, and all of these programs are free. You don't need a library card to attend. July was a record-breaking month for us, so not captured here, but we hosted 64 events and had over 1,000 people attend. So in addition to our programs that we host in the library, we also host dozens of class visits. So we have relationships with all of the local elementary schools, and they all come regularly for visits to the library. We also attend school and community events. So we were at the grand opening at Biddle Park, we were at the BIA's car show, and these are events we consider outreach. So when you see program and outreach numbers, that's capturing all of the programs engagement. And this is just a quick glimpse of some of the new community partners that we established this year. This isn't an exhaustive list, but already these members are reaching out to the library to see how we can work together. And I wanted to touch on some of our sponsors. So when I entered into the library, our budget was already finalized for 2026. But we saw a gap in programming for teens, especially in the community. So we needed to rely on sponsors to help do that for us. So we reached out to Danny Brackett Auto Group, who generously offered to sponsor all of our teen programs, and we were able to offer a weekly program all summer long with the teens. We also offer a teen advisory board where teens earn their community service hours for volunteering with us. But we know that to get teens into the library, you need to provide food. So Pizza sponsored us, and now we have pizza at all of those meetings, and our group is growing and growing. So we couldn't achieve our current service levels without our dedicated volunteers, from delivering books to seniors, to hosting weekly programs for adults, to helping to maintain our collection. We have 12 dedicated volunteers who between January to June have already volunteered 276 hours of their time, and that's an average of 11 hours a week. To rely quite a bit on our volunteers. And of course, the more people that we bring into the building, the more for our programming through our engagement program, the more library cards that we get to sign people up for. So just a note in this chart here, while we are on a fantastic trajectory of card holders, it doesn't depict our total patron engagement because a card is only required to borrow material. So in that video, all of the programs and the computers and use of our space, the printing, the faxing, all of that does not require a library card. So those numbers aren't captured here. We have on average 100 visits to the library a day, and in July we had over 5,000 visits to the library, averaging 160 a day. This shows the new members that we've had between January to June of this year. So 203 new members, and just shows it across the geographic area. So Shelburne's winning the race right now for new members. That's an average of 1 new member every day. And just another clarifying note that these are first-time card holders. So if Mayor Mills, for example, came to the library and he wanted to borrow a ROM pass, but discovered that his card was expired and we renewed that card, that's not captured here. It's completely new member. So Shelburne has 139 new members since January, which is an average of 60 patrons every month. September is Get a Library Card month, I've been told by the team, and we're going to challenge our mayor to have a challenge across the municipalities to see who can get more memberships through the different.
I like these numbers.
You like winning the race.
I'll issue that challenge.
So you might be wondering what a library card gets you access to, and as I said in the video, books are just the beginning of all we offer. And so I'll just touch on a few things that they were in the video, but we offer passes to cultural, historical, and natural sites. So if you have a library card, you come into the library and you ask for a pass to go to the ROM, and you can take your family there for free for the day. Same with Ontario Parks, and you get that pass for 7 days, and it's a day pass. So at the parks, it's a vehicle that you get granted access for free. So libraries are finding new and creative ways to be able to create access to other things. We also expand access with our kiosk and Foodland, which opened in 2024. So since our hours of operation are limited, this was a creative way to increase access to our collection because Foodland is open 7 days a week, much more than we are. And our staff visit the kiosk regularly to update it with the collection. And in July, we had a record number of 90 checkouts at the kiosk. So even though it was put in 2024, it seems people are still just discovering it. Another way we expand our access is with our digital library, which we like to say is always open. So your library card, you could use and never step foot in the library and access thousands of ebooks, audiobooks, which are great if you're a commuter, movies, music, TV shows, and even newspapers in all different languages from all around the world. So if you'd like to subscribe to the Toronto Star or the Globe and Mail, you can get those for free library card. Right to your device, all from home. So public libraries are critical cultural and social infrastructure. They are integral for building personal, entrepreneurial, and social capacity through the access that we provide to programs, information, and opportunities for people to meet and connect with their community. Our physical location serves as a gathering place for people of all ages to engage in lifelong learning through access to local and global resources. And libraries provide a level playing field by providing that equitable access to resources and encouraging interactions from all social groups. As the Ontario Library Service says, where other spaces force us into defined roles, consumer, client, employee, or student, public libraries are a space for unqualified humanity, where nothing is expected of us other than our respect for one another. And in serving this holistic role, public libraries are the cornerstone of a strong community. Sounds great, right? But as a head librarian, I'm of course a little biased. at all the great things that we offer at the library. So how do I prove to you, our stakeholders, and to our residents, the impact that we have in our community and on our residents whose tax dollars directly fund our little library? How do we value an inherently intangible human-based service? Well, we found a way. Librarians are good at that. So the Ontario Library Service, in partnership with the Nordic Institute at Algoma University, worked with CEOs, First Nation groups, and French-speaking communities to design the Valiant Ontario Libraries Toolkit, which is also known as VOLT. And this is a step-by-step guide that helps public libraries demonstrate their community impact and measure the quality of our services. The kit uses data that libraries already collect. So every year we're required by the ministry to report statistics across all service levels. So data like our visitor counts, our circulation, our program attendance, and it calculates how much economic value a library gives back to its community for every dollar it receives. So it takes our free services and turns them into a dollar amount using the private market's same price for that service. The toolkit then calculates an economic value across 7 domains, which I had it on a previous slide, which are education, culture, inclusion and well-being, entertainment and leisure, economic development, civic engagement, and faith, culminating in a social return on investment. So I'm going to take you through Shelburne's breakdown of the data that we received. So based on our 2025 data, Shelburne Public Library provided an economic benefit of $2.8 million for the people of Shelburne and our neighboring municipalities. And you can see that number there spread across the 7 domains, which is a little blurry I'm seeing from here, but hopefully it's clear for you. So for context or comparables, Caledon Public Library's economic benefit for 2025 was $28 million. And Orangeville Library, they last did this toolkit in 2024, and their economic benefit was over $9 million. So libraries are having a significant economic benefit on their communities. So from this, a social return on investment, or an SROI, is calculated. And that's by taking the economic benefit, so the 2.8 million, and divided by our municipal funding. So just the funding provided by Shelburne, not the fund provided by our contract municipalities. So for every dollar invested in the Shelburne Public Library in 2025, $12 was reinvested back to the community. Fantastic number. We should all be jumping up and down with joy, but it's actually bittersweet and not as realistic as I might hope. So in fact, when we were calculating and we received the results of our toolkit, I actually assumed that we made an error and reached out to the Ontario Library Service consultants to review our data to make sure that we were in fact having an economic return of $12, knowing that the industry standard, and libraries aren't, we'd say not to compare them because every community is so different, but the industry standard is usually between a $4 and $7 return on investment, which is still incredible. I was going to be excited by too. So what we discovered in reviewing the data, that the reason our social return on investment is so high is because we are doing so much with so little, because we took that impact and we divided by the municipal funding. And I can tell you that having run the library now for just over 10 months, I have the most dedicated team. I have to stop them from working for free. But the level of service that our small team is providing just isn't sustainable in the long term, especially as demand for our service continues to grow. So before I wrap up, I'm just going to dig into a bit more data to illustrate how public libraries are funded. So I'll just share a note that this is 2024 data because the ministry hasn't yet released 2025 data. That's due to come out in the next couple of weeks. But just a reminder that libraries are governed by the Public Libraries Act, and this is our key piece of provincial legislation that establishes free public library service across Ontario. And as a result, every library in Ontario receives PLOG, which is short for the Provincial Library Operating Grant. And not only has that funding not increased since 1998, which puts immense pressure on municipalities to put the funding for libraries, but as this graph shows, in 2024, Shelburne received the lowest funds when compared to libraries serving populations of the same size. And the reason for that is because the funding formula was based on total households in 1998, and we know that Shelburne has undergone extensive growth, being the fastest growing community in Canada and Ontario. So the funding has not reflected that growth. And then just to take us into the municipal funding as a comparison, in 2024, when we looked at 9 other libraries with current populations of our size, Shelburne was on the lower end. And this, I just want to clarify, is not because council has denied requests for increased funding. Council has in fact not been asked for increased funding to keep up with the growing demands of the library. So that is something that I'm going to be bringing forward to the budget as we review the budget at the end of September to ensure that our current budget meets the needs of the community right now, because we are falling behind. How we can keep that to move forward. And for the last one, I know you'll be launching new strategic priorities for the upcoming term, but I wanted to highlight that there isn't a service or program that we offer that doesn't align or reflect with at least one of council's priorities. Our library is community-led. It's through consultation that we determine what programs and services to offer. It's through these effective partnerships that we develop with residents, local businesses, and organizations that we can enhance our offerings beyond our staff capacity. The principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion really are the foundation of everything libraries do, from how we design our space to the books on our shelves to the welcoming and inclusive programs. And as I have demonstrated, our library generates significant social return on investment. Every dollar invested produces value through improved literacy, stronger educational outcomes, workforce development, digital inclusion, access to reliable information, and support for learning. But beyond our measurable financial impact, our library helps strengthen the social fabric of our community. We are a trusted, welcoming space where people from all backgrounds gather, learn, create, connect. So my only ask is that when presented with our budget for 2027, to please consider how investing in the library not only aligns with council priorities, but is an investment in our shared future. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty remarkable when you look at what a library of our size is able to accomplish. So kudos to you and the team who's in the room tonight, as well as those who aren't here. And I mean, just looking at that one number alone, the increase rather than program in 1 year, I think it's pretty shocking in a positive way. So congratulations. You're right. I mean, the library, and I don't think this can be said in every community, unfortunately, but I think certainly here the library is kind of that social, cultural, civic hub of the community in so many ways. The two slides that I find the most troubling are these, and full disclosure, Shannon and I had a bit of a chat a couple of weeks ago, so I did get a bit of a preview as to what some of the asks might be. Obviously, the municipal funding, that's an easier one for council to tackle because it's very much within our control. It'll be the next council that is considering your request. I am glad that you pointed out, though, I mean, certainly in my 12 years around this table, I think council has always funded what's been requested. But based on these numbers, I guess there shouldn't be a surprise for the next incoming council that request may be increasing. On the provincial side, though, I still think council has a role to play when it comes to advocating ministry. I've mentioned to Shannon, one of the first things I think that we can look at is delegation of confidence in January. We're not alone, obviously, but if the funding formula hasn't been adjusted since 1998, a community that's grown as fast as ours is impacted much more greatly than others that haven't grown. So I think obviously the minister needs to be made aware of that and encouraged to adjust that and update the formula accordingly. And anyways, happy to continue to work with you towards that. And, other questions or comments?
Just wanted to say, I mean, echoing what the mayor said, and having worked with you and your staff over even the weekends event, you do so much with so little, and anybody that says you're not doing a good job is sadly mistaken and probably owes you an apology. But no, keep doing what you're doing, and you'll have our support.
Well, one question I would have, because anytime there's an increase for funding at the municipal level, I think rightly people ask, okay, what's the return on that? So I think one of the arguments could be made, look, you know, you're accomplishing so much as it is, do you need more money? Like, what, and like devil's advocate, right? So I'm, you know, in some ways, your success can also, you know, in some ways become your enemy, but, you know, if you were to receive more funding, could you put that to use?
Yeah, so my top priority is to increase our staff level. So I would be requesting for one full-time staff. Right now, we only have 2 full-time staff, that includes me. And until I started, there was only 1 full-time staff. So to say that we have an administrative backlog would be an understatement. So while we can keep our front desk service administratively in terms of policy, legislation, requirements and all of that, we are significantly behind, and that's where there's a gap. And also within our collection development. So it's that back end administrative work that we really are seeing where the need to get cut off, where the gaps are. So that's a priority. And then the second priority is our collection. So the cost of e-resources has increased substantially. So it's increased by 43%. The demand for e-resources, so all of the books and audiobooks, music, TV shows that you can access, has increased by 43%, but the cost has increased by 93% since 2022. So in 2022, we spent $15,000 just under on our collections for e-resources, and in 2025, we spent just under $30,000. So it doubled. And this is an issue with publishers not allowing libraries to have the same level of access to ebooks and digital resources the way the public does. So for example, you can purchase an ebook for just say $15, where the library's gonna pay $60 for that ebook, and we won't own it, you'll own it. We won't own it, they'll only give it to us for 2 years, so maybe 12 people can borrow it during that time. So that's where the barrier is when it comes to our collection, so it really is happening at that level, and libraries at the provincial level are undergoing major advocacy around this, but libraries are having to reduce access to digital resources as a result, but that's how we stay relevant. The community wants digital resources. We are seeing a demand for that more than our physical books. So to meet the needs of the communities, we have to provide this service, but it's just not sustainable. But my first priority certainly is that.
I see the question, so. I know what they work with. And that, I mean, and that's the thing too, right? Volunteers are amazing, but there's only so much you can continuously ask of your volunteers, right? And it is, I mean, just think about it, folks, like, where do you go where there's 2 full-time staff on, you know, in a publicly, you know, funded and utilized space? Like, it's crazy.
Retirements.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it had quite a bit
Yeah.
of
you know,
staff change and, yeah.
And as you mentioned with the e-resources, right, it's hard because people are expecting to have that ability, and if we have to reduce that ability, then they start getting angry, what are my taxes paying for? Right, if why are we putting $200,000 into the library, and yet I've been told now I have to have a reduction in how many books that I can take out. So it's hard, because it's a vicious circle, right? We need the money to keep the, you know, ebooks going and collections going, but then people need to make sure that, you know, they can have that, and if they can't have it, then they don't wanna give the money. And so it's like, no, but we need the money. So I know it's amazing what you're doing with what you're allotted. And I feel that we need to address that so that it can operate at, you know, full capacity, and you know, there's other programs and things like that that potentially we could be doing that we aren't, because we just don't have the funds for it or the staff for it, or, you know, so yeah, we're growing and we need to grow with our growth.
just to add, the business model for publishing is to sell books, and your library business model flies in the face of that. So of course they're gonna charge you a premium for, you know, their items that for borrowing, as opposed to, you know, they don't make as much money off you as you're loaning it. Book at it for free as if somebody is actually purchasing the book. So I get that, but it puts you in a precarious situation in terms of cost versus good, you know.
I would just share that one thing libraries are trying to show the publishing industry is that if we can make people fall in love with reading, we're actually increasing their market. If you give them a book, we let them try it for free and they love it, then they don't wanna wait for it again, they're gonna.
Make a purchase on their own.
Yeah, but they still very much have the mindset that it's competition.
So Deputy Mayor and I have a county council meeting Thursday morning, so I think two of us was more than happy to issue that challenge to the other mayors and deputies.
Right.
Yeah, and just one final comment in full disclosure, Shannon sort of offered a cute anecdote about a mayor potentially finding out that his library card had expired. There might be some truth to that. It's all.
Not checked.
It was all, currently a member again in good standing.
I don't have a card yet.
Well, there you go.
So there you go.
Yeah.
Well, wait until that challenge does.
I had to renew mine too, so.
Yeah.
Same.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I look forward to hearing more good news.
And if I may, I just realized I didn't share this, but we have worked closely with town staff to develop the MOU for the facilities, and I want to share how many efficiencies we found that they did behind that. So I think the more we do work with town staff, create more of that partnership and those agreements. More.
Good stuff. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Can I just have a motion to receive the presentation? Yep. By Councillor Gushardi, seconded by Councillor Wagner. All in favor? It's carried. All right. Thanks again, guys. Next up, we have a proclamation for Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, and there will be a flag raising on Tuesday, September 1st at 1:30 p.m. Across the street here at Jack Downing Park. The proclamation reads as follows, and bear with me, it's kind of a long one. Whereas approximately 10,000 children are living with cancer in Canada today, each year about 1,500 cases are diagnosed. Because of significant advances in therapy, 82% of these children will survive 5 years or more. Childhood cancer remains responsible for more deaths in 1 year through adolescence than any other disease. And whereas families facing the journey of childhood cancer need the best possible medical, financial, and emotional support we can provide, every family touched by childhood cancer needs be supported, assuming of its relatives, neighbors, teachers, and community. Parents need to understand and be compassionate and receive compassion from their employers. Brothers and sisters need special consideration both at home and in school. Young cancer patients themselves need every opportunity to express and pursue the dreams that are the hallmark of childhood and the hope that cancer can be beaten. Whereas this month we recognize the dedication and hard work of all those scientists, healthcare professionals, parent organizations, and volunteers who are working to overcome childhood cancer and assist these families. We admire and support the courageous youth and their parents who struggle with this disease. And whereas we applaud and commend the dedicated volunteers at Candlelight, Simcoe Parents, Children with Cancer for the work they do for families of children with cancer in our region. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Wade Mills, on behalf of Council, do hereby proclaim September 2026 as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. So if you're available, please join us on Tuesday, September 1st at 1:30 for a flag raising. Council inquiries. Councilor Wagner.
Okay, so I'll kind of go with my quicker, easier one first. Jim, I was just wondering if you have any updates on the lane closure that is on Main Street over by 124. It kind of appears to me like they are done, but the pylons are still up and it's sort of impeding traffic still, so I'm just wondering when they will be done. It's true, but.
Through your worship, we do have regular site meetings. Our last one was in late July over there. Tuesday, on Wednesday, they were gonna do paving, which they did do. Thursday was to be the line marking on the street and then opening for that weekend. So they're a few weeks behind. I did inquire with the engineer in charge of the project. Unfortunately, I haven't heard back yet.
Okay.
It is in MTO's control there, so it must be something. Yeah.
Something, right, so I'm just like, okay.
It's been a while.
Yeah, I'm like, it's time to go. So, okay, we'll just, I guess, keep our ears open for any updates or whatnot to see when those will be down. So my second one is a little more tricky, just because with the community concerns lately on Facebook, they're definitely becoming louder and more frequent with regards to break-ins and suspected drug houses and things of that nature. So I think part of the problem is maybe the community doesn't understand council's limitations within policing. I'm seeing a lot of chatter where we're not doing anything, we're deferring, we just don't care. So I guess, I don't know if maybe we can speak to sort of what limitations council has with regards to policing, and requesting certain things. Secondary to that would be what the procedure would be, or if we can create some form of a town hall where we can get OPP to come and answer some questions, or even just come and speak to council, just to give us something with regards to what they're doing to find solutions to stop this. It just seems to be continuing to increase. I'm sure they're doing obviously stuff behind the scenes that we don't necessarily know, or they can't even tell us, because obviously, as we know, there are certain procedures and protocols that they have to follow in order to make any kind of convictions stick, right? So they're not going to be able to give us or the community specifics, but I do find or feel that there should be something that they can offer us to help the community understand that it is still a priority and they are on it. Because right now it just really seems like we're seeing an increase, and the community's getting frustrated, right? Because they're just thinking like, why don't we have more patrols? Why don't we have more people, in place to get these guys when they know they're hitting specific areas in our town on a regular basis at a certain time? So just, like I said, if we can just kind of have a little bit of oversight on that, just so anyone watching or anyone who will watch can kind of have some more information.
So thank you for the question. I'm going to answer part 2 first. So with respect to process, if Shelburne Council would wish to make requests that the OPP hold a town hall, that would either be sent directly to the OPP and the detachment commander and or the board. The board would actually then have that consultation. I also would suggest that the list of the specific issues that, other than just Facebook information, that Shelburne would put together to say, these are our top 10, or these are the kind of issues as opposed to Facebook, that would be beneficial. There were examples of community hall, town hall meetings that I'm aware of in 2025 held by the OPP. Reference 3. Whether or not they still do that format, I know there has been some adjustment coming out of Aurelia and how they're structured. In the absence of that, similar to when we went to do costing, we could have the detachment commander or representatives from the OPP to address those needs. With respect to the first part, in terms of what were provided, services that we received from the town of Shelburne, and staff will provide a memo again, because I know it's been a while. There is a contract with the OPP, and it outlines the kinds of things that we receive and what that contract entails and what it doesn't. We also supplement a lot of what some people would say falls into the realm or think does within our bylaw, but they have a different research. So if that's necessary, I think that would be, the OPP can certainly address that, but maybe staff would be in a better position to remind council of the contract, how it's structured. And then I know that there's been questions that I have responded to members of council, and I'm going to address it here just so it's out there. It's not a simple, we want another officer. Like we want what was called an enhancement in the past for XYZ. There are processes in terms of the budgetary structure that they undertake to hire that person, to assign them to function, and how they're structured. So we went through a very comprehensive review when we switched from Shelburne Police Services to the OPP. Our FTE, our full-time equivalent complement, stayed intact. So I know that there's sometimes a presumption that we're not getting the amount of service or support. And as you referenced, there is a lot going on that even staff are not privy to. There's confidentiality. So that contract is fairly succinct in how many staff we get, the allocations, and I would say it's fairly robust overall, and it's worth about $1.7 million. And I know tonight there is something on the budget. The Ministry of Finance is the one that organizationally instructs the contract. This is your cost based on a 2 model. So we are now on the new model. Call for services is the one component, the fixed component based on your number of properties is the base. So you get a base cost, that doesn't change, it's like your water cost, right? I know people don't understand it. Why don't you use any water? Why am I getting a bill? Okay, we get a bill for this, and then what drives the secondary component of that is the amount of calls that you have, and those 2 things merge. And that is also determined by their estimate of the officers that are assigned to us. If they don't do as many calls based on the estimate, then there's a credit. So I hope that just the high level structure of how you.
No, I'll just add a couple of additional comments. So that the way that sort of council's interaction with our OBP Dufferin attachment works, I mean, kind of twofold, but formally, through the police service board, the deputy mayor, myself, Councilor Donato sit on the police service board. The role of that board, not unlike the way a municipal service board works, is that board can provide some input when it comes to sort of high level policy sorts of things, but definitely not any direct operational input.
Right.
So, at a board meeting, you can't say, look, we know there's an issue on such and such a street, we want you to go and do something. That's not the way this works. It's not the way it worked under Shelburne Police Service either. Beyond that formal approach, we have a fairly direct line of communication with the detachment commander. Our permanent detachment commander has been seconded to another position for a period of time, so we have an acting now. And those sorts of discussions happen fairly regularly too. I had coffee with Inspector Biswell a couple of weeks ago. So there is lots of conversation going on. Concerns from the community are being expressed, but to a certain degree, that's where the role of council sort of stops and where policing picks up. In terms of the request to have members of the OBP attend, as the CAO said, I think a full-fledged town hall might be a heavier lift. I'm not saying it's not possible,
Right.
but I think it may take longer. What we might be able to accomplish in short order is to have a delegation.
Okay.
So acting Inspector Mulligan, could come and we could provide him with sort of a list of things we want to talk about.
Right.
The 7 of us around this table on behalf, if he has elected us, can ask questions and get answers. So that's something that I think.
Yeah, that would be great, because I feel that, I think people are just frustrated right now because they feel that they're just not having any answers, right? And they're just in this limbo of, break-ins and it doesn't seem like anything is happening, and it is, but it's just their perception, right? And so it's like, the only way to change that perception is to show them that, something is happening, and we are trying, right? And the police are trying.
I think we could put either date to them and see what works for that. Yeah, okay. Excellent. All right.
Thank you so much, guys.
Any other requires?
Just a quick one for Jim, on an update on water tower repairs for the old water tower.
Through your worship, yes, so we're speaking with SBA, that is budgeted for this year. We have found out that there is only a couple of companies that do that, that pretty well booked for this year. We do have kind of a hierarchy of RFPs coming out with, sewage treatment plant being top order right now, and then shop expansion, that sort of thing. So the hope is to get the RFP out this year and awarded, and then pump the repairs in next year. We're hoping to get away with just pressure washing it, and it's going to be a full sandblast, so it's going to have enclosed sandblasted front and paint. So.
Okay. Everybody's good?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so we're going to jump into our regular agenda now. One amendment I'm going to make, our fire chief is here with us, and rather than make him sit through the entirety of the agenda, I am going to bump item number 5, which was the addendum, up to the number 2 spot. So after we get through kind of the planning report, then we'll deal with you, Chief, and you can carry on with the rest of your evening. All right, so but before we get there, I am going to ask Steve to come back up and walk us through the report for 600 Main Street East.
Again.
Wrap it up there.
Fire this back up, but feel pretty important now going out of fire chief.
Well, there is some method to my madness. Maybe we're paying you by the hour.
So we do have some, I think, online as well for this. So Donna Bravo from Rothman Investments Limited, representing the receiver, as well as Patrick Yarrington is legal counsel to the receiver, and Mark Yarrington is the planner. So I think council is very familiar with this development. It has a long history going back to in the background of my report. I recap kind of where we've come from, which is a developer had obtained, or previous owner had obtained draft plan of subdivision and condominium approvals. And then it took some time for them to secure a builder. That builder navigated the detailed design process and had home models designed and was pretty close to getting into home construction. The site was pre-serviced with all the underground services. The base roads are there, but ran into some difficulty about a year ago, and the property went into receivership. And so since that time, we've been working with the receiver and their representatives to figure out what the options are, because in April of 2025, the draft plan approvals had lapsed. It was very close to having final approval. A subdivision agreement had been drafted. Many of the conditions had been cleared, but there were a few items remaining outstanding, and a timeline was given for those items to be addressed, and they ultimately weren't. This is a new provision under the Planning Act. We haven't had a request like this before because it's a relatively recent change that's been added through one of the current government's many changes to the Planning Act, which allows that expired draft plan approvals can be reinstated, subject to some criteria. And one of the criteria, which is the easiest one here to address, is that the draft plan hasn't been expired for more than 5 years. This one just expired last April, so no problem with that. The other is that this is a one-time opportunity. So although this approval had been extended several times under different provisions of the Act, the reinstatement of a lapsed draft plan approval is a one-time thing. So this is an important decision point for this development, because once this decision has been made, if it's reinstated, it can't be further extended or reinstated again. If it were to lapse again, it can't be reinstated, and if it were to not get final approval prior to lapsing it, there's no opportunity to extend it further. So that speaks to the timeline request, which the applicant has asked for 3 years from the previous expiry date. So it's not quite 3 years from now, it's a little less than 2, but essentially gives the receiver some time to continue to market the property. Having the draft plan approvals, as they've identified, is really critical to that. Certainly marketing for development when it doesn't have that status is a more challenging thing. And so the request is to allow 3 years from April 2nd, 2025 to April 2nd, 2028. As I stated, the previous owner was very close to finalizing all the remaining clearances. And so it's not necessarily the case that the receiver would have to have secured a developer and builder or sell the property. All they have to do is make sure that the remaining clearances and conditions have been addressed, including critically with the town a final executed subdivision agreement. And then there were some outside clearances, including with the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority. If the property were to lose its draft plan approval, or if council didn't grant the reinstatement, that's not the end of the story for the development. The other opportunity is to reapply for essentially the same thing. However, that's a longer and certainly a more expensive process and more time-consuming process for the applicant. And ultimately has some uncertainties because it would go back through all the circulations, public consultations, appeal periods, and it would ultimately be a new council that would consider that as well. So a different avenue, but still another avenue to the same, another path to the same kind of objective. But obviously the applicant is here to request the reinstatement. The third condition under the Act for this type of request is a bit of an odd one, and it's really been what has taken this much time to figure out, and that's that there can't have been any purchase and sale agreements entered into for land by description under the original draft plan. We're not quite clear what the province's objective was there, because one of the main purposes of obtaining draft plan approval is to allow for that to happen. Once you have a draft plan approval, you can take deposits from interested purchasers, and we were never provided with any purchase and sale agreements. That is a requirement of the subdivision agreement that be provided. It wasn't provided. The developer who was working on this project previously had indicated there were some pre-sales, and we did hear from purchasers inquiring from time to time about how long it would take for their unit to be ready. However, the receiver has specifically stated by statutory declaration that any agreements that were made with any other parties have been disclaimed, they're no longer valid. And further that as of the date of their declaration, that there are no outstanding purchase and sale agreements. So that qualifies in discussion with legal counsel to meet that third requirement of the Act, that there isn't purchase and sale agreements outstanding. It's been many months, if not more than a year, since we've heard from anybody who may have thought they had a unit reserved in the development. So we're not seeing any indications that there are people looking to challenge the receiver or the town on the status of anything. So we're satisfied that the requirements of the Act have been met. The rest of my report just confirms that procedurally there's no public notice requirement for this step. What it would mean is essentially it's back to where it was back before April 2nd, 2025. That the engineering designs and reports can all be finalized, the subdivision agreement can be finalized, that will come before council before it can be executed. So there will be further report to the council about this. And that they would have again until April 2nd, 2028 to secure all those final approvals. From there, as I've relayed to council before, I know the interest here has been, well, let's get this project going and get the homes constructed. That part is maybe a bit more complicated now than it was even a year and a half ago. Because the picture has changed, as you saw in May of this year through Steve's report on servicing allocation. We experienced higher flows at the wastewater plant than we anticipated, and still getting to the bottom of the causes of some of that. And so the recommendation, which was supported by council in May, was to not grant any new allocations to development, at least for this year, until we have more information, or the wastewater plant has advanced far enough in its upgrade process to give confidence upon the timing of when that additional capacity will be provided. So the third part of my recommendation deals specifically with the applicant's request to reinstate the servicing capacity. And I've just been upfront with them that there frankly isn't capacity to allocate at this time, which again is a change in circumstances that we didn't foresee even a year and a half ago when we started talking with them about this. However, there are ways to address that, given we also now on the good news front have more certainty with respect to the funding plan for the wastewater plant. And that was the missing piece when this development was being considered previously, and frankly, an overall constraint on development continuing beyond what we know is already on the books. I have outlined to them the timing and the steps involved in the process for the wastewater plant procurement and award and tendering and ultimately the construction, and that all of those boxes have to be checked at the appropriate time to create that path of certainty to ensure that the approvals can move forward to home construction and then ultimately occupancy. But we do have now one other draft plan of subdivision, which has draft plan approval status, which is in the same boat, and that was approved earlier this year for the west side of town, where there's 230 units that are pending this wastewater plant upgrade. The conditions and agreements will all be structured around that, and that's what we would do in this case. We would work those provisions into the subdivision agreement such that activity with respect to final approvals can continue while the wastewater plant process for design and tendering and approvals and ultimately construction are continuing to align steps in the building and construction process with steps in the wastewater plant process. And as we have more confidence about the delivery date of having more capacity online, then we can give greater certainty as to the timing of when permits need to be issued and whether that needs to happen in a phased manner or what the release of that will look like. So that really is my report. Happy to support the direction to see this development, finished, and this is the best way to do that, in my opinion, to reinstate those draft plans, create more appetite for a builder and developer to come in, hopefully partner with the receiver or buy the property to finish that, and then deal with servicing matters through the subdivision agreement to ensure it's aligned with the wastewater plant upgrades. So I think that's what I wanted to capture in terms of my report. Representatives for the development are here primarily to answer questions if council has any of them. They didn't have anything to present, so I'll pause there for any comments or questions from council. Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Whiteman.
We've seen this sort of development come back and forth so many times now, I'm losing track. I thought we allocated the allocation for them, I thought we put some aside for them specifically and sort of saved it. So that if it did come, we could sort of grant it. Did that change or did I forget something?
So I should have spoke to that in my presentation, but in my report, I took us back to last fall when there was a party at the table that was interested in acquiring the property.
Yeah.
And they made a presentation and outlined some changes they were proposing to the unit types and the density. And last fall, we thought we had more capacity available for them and for this development generally than we found out we do. And so there was a preliminary reserve that was granted by council last fall.
Right.
But for that request specifically. And that party did not proceed with acquiring the site. And we didn't have the information then that we do now, which is that the 2025 flows to the plant were much higher than we expected. We hope that will correct over the course of the next 2 years, but ultimately it's another sign that major development is going to be heavily reliant on wastewater plant upgrades. So
that's where.
With the lapsing of the draft plan approvals, the allocation also expired.
Right.
We'd love to be able to say we should reestablish that now and line those two things up, but out of an abundance of caution, you can speak to this too as well if needed. We're
of course,
recommending that
rather,
no allocation be provided at this time.
Of course.
And that the proper pathway to the final approval and to the construction, not final approval, should be with the wastewater.
Yeah. Now, if we do start seeing capacity be available, would something like this take priority over the west? Because it's tricky, right? It's like we want this one sort of, it's so close to being there.
Yes.
But now they have, somebody who would purchase this now is coming in after the West End, approval and things like that. But so how does that work with priority level?
Definitely, and just to put a finer point on how serious the flow issue has become, there's also been like a moratorium on anything the basement part. So
Right.
it's kind of a
It's a full stop.
on pretty much everything. So what we would look at first is just like this sewer capacity allocation policy are those things that are most ready to go, already have pipes in the ground, have very little left to do in terms of permits.
Okay, and the number I'm assuming as well, right? The sheer volume, how many would go in there compared
And
to how
whether it
many?
can be phased, but I think the hope is that as time moves on and we get closer to the plant being upgraded and that capacity coming online, there might be some phasing or something we can start to release smaller in small numbers,
Yep.
a little bit of capacity.
Okay, that makes sense.
But that will really depend on the circumstances at the time and what Steve and his team have at their fingertips to recommend based on the science and the math and being careful.
Yes, of
Yeah.
course. Okay, no, that's great. Thank you so much for clarifying. I'm good.
Did you want to add anything? Steve?
Just we had talked about how the recommendation is set up. It's very much in line with how the report was, where it was a full stop. I think one thing that you need council to know that even during the construction phase, there are times where half the plant needs to be kind of taken offline for that construction actually to happen. So that's why we are taking a cautious approach. And I guess the only other difficulty we have is that if council recalls, when we do these calculations, they're based on the average load. So the number magically dropping is not a high likelihood.
Right.
At this point, it's not like we're using peak flows. It was a peak event that significantly affected the plant and caused bypass this past year as well, which emphasizes the issue of being cautious, but averages take time to come back as well. So I we expect that this will be placed with a tender contract.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, and I mean, certainly from the receiver's perspective, I can see that marketing this property is much easier if those draft plans are still in place. So I mean, I certainly have no problem doing that. All of us would like to see this bad. But I think both absolutely right that in terms of the allocation, just we have to support that. So
Yeah.
even if we wanted to, that's just, it's not a realistic option. It wouldn't be responsible. So,
Yeah.
So I'm certainly happy.
Yeah, for sure.
Other comments? Anybody want to make a motion for the recommendation by Deputy Mayor Hall, seconded by Councillor Sample? So just to summarize, we're receiving Steve's report. We are effectively extending draft plan of subdivision and draft plan of common elements condominium for 3 years from the date of expiry, which was April 2nd, 2025. So effectively we're giving this life until April 2nd, 2028. But the servicing allocation is being deferred until we have a better idea of what capacity we actually have to work with. Yeah. Okay, all in favor? It's great. Okay, thanks, guys.
Yeah, I'm sticking around for the check.
Oh, man. Had I known that, I would have been right up there then. All right.
By the hour.
Yeah. So as I said, we're going to move item number 5 up next. So Chief Pratt, welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council, staff. I sort of apologize for putting such a lengthy document in front of you. But I felt through direction of the fire board and personally that I wanted to get all the establishing and regulating bylaws updated to accurately reflect the level of service that we provide our partner municipalities and further to address some of the legislation that has changed since the last DNR bylaw was written. We have the CRA, which I believe is 2018. I'm happy to report that the mandatory certification piece that was legislated July 1st, 2026, we are in compliance and working towards the piece that will be July 1st, 2028. So really, I don't want to take a lot of credit for the document. It's largely a cookie cutter document that many of the fire services throughout the province are using. It accurately reflects, again, the levels of service that we provide. And I said to the fire board, and I know I've probably said it here as well, that one of the most important clauses to me in the document is the limited service clause, knowing that we are a volunteer fire department, although we paper call staff, everybody is, coming from their place of residence or their place of employment. So there really is no guarantee when the tones go off that anybody's gonna attend. So that clause is there just in case there's some horrendous event that, prevents staff from getting to the fire hall from the residents, et cetera, or, something. The last 2 nights, we've had 2 calls simultaneously, so you're running trucks, to this incident, and then you get another incident, and you just can't prepare for that, so that's why I think the limited service clause is important to me, at least to us as an organization, to municipalities, so. Again, I think it's pretty straightforward. I've been to council previously to talk about the levels of service. That's reflected in the bylaw. This bylaw doesn't change our levels of service. It doesn't affect our budget. It's just kind of making sure that, everything we do is captured and that we are current with all the current legislation that, whether it's through the FPPA, the Fire Protection and Prevention Act, or its regulations. So I'd be more than happy to answer any questions. Again, we are compliant with the July 1st regulation of mandatory certification. So I'm going to bring a report to the fire board at our next meeting, just kind of as an awareness piece. But other than that, unless there's something specific, again, it's just to try and make sure that what we are providing our member municipalities, people know what level of service, and conversely, if we have an incident that we don't provide that level of service, people understand that, we're not trained to provide that. And we might have to reach out to, a neighboring municipality or maybe even the province to provide that service. So those contingencies are in place as well.
And like you said, just to maybe understand that it's volunteer based, right? Like, you said it's not all people will be able to come to the call, so that does limit our ability sometimes.
Yeah, similar to the library, we have a full-time equivalent of 2. So we have more volunteer staff that do get paid by the hour, but yeah, there is no guarantee. We have a great dedicated group of staff, and but everybody has careers and family life, etc. So we can never predict when the tones are going to go off and how many different incidents we might call to at the same time. So it's just kind of a bit of a protection, but more importantly to me, it's to be compliant with recent legislation.
For sure.
Okay. Questions for the chief? So are you doing a bit of a roadshow? The other municipalities as well.
Can we save that conversation for a couple of weeks?
We can. Yeah, absolutely.
We're the only one.
Correct.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And your current one is the most recent, so
Yeah.
2 gold stars for the show.
That's good. That's good. Just one sort of quick point on response. So yeah, I mean, it is volunteer, but compared to a lot of other volunteer services, I think we're getting lucky in terms of the response we get in most cases, right?
Yeah, it's quite honestly, it's a constant conversation at the chief level to say, how is your response? How are you doing to attract staff? We just lost one, but we have an approved complement of 38. Right now we're at 37. So there is conversation with the other fire chiefs about doing another recruitment early in the new year so that we maintain our levels. But as far as response, and I report to the fire board monthly, as you're aware, in terms of our trying to meet certain standards. NFPA, which is the National Fire Protection Association, has certain standards for fire departments. And I think we're very close, we're very good in terms of meeting those standards, especially for a part-time or volunteer department.
I would commend the employers that do support and encourage some of the other employers to look at opportunities for these individuals to get them to support the community that they service.
Yeah, and I think, again, we've been very lucky to have employers who are supportive of that, say, look, if you get a call in the middle of the day while you're working, go ahead. Yeah, and that doesn't happen in every community. Okay, any other questions? Okay, so we need a motion to receive the chief's report And then for leave to be given for the reading and enacting of bylaw number 34-2026, which is a bylaw to establish and regulate a fire department for the town of Shelburne. By Deputy Mayor Hall, seconded by Mr. Sample. All in favor? Carried. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Your Worship, for moving me up the alliance. Looking forward to the next.
See you soon.
Okay, take care, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you for your service.
See you now. All right, back on track. So next is the report from our CAO regarding traffic calming strategies.
Thank you, Arabelle. So this is a fairly significant report in terms of detail and data. So I'm going to present an overview without hopefully having to take us back for every aspect of the traffic calming that we've undertaken ASH is eliminated. Jim Moss, the director, is part of this report, as is Steve Burnett. And Steve Weaver, he had a role to play as well, so he's quite excited about something of this. So the SBA report, which is the very technical document, is attached to Appendix 1. So that really is the nitty-gritty of components of the project. And if you have specific questions after I'm done, I'm going to direct all those to Steve in terms of functionality, the cost, and the program, and why those elements of the traffic calming program are so essential to the strategy that we were trying to implement. Obviously, just a bit of history, with the elimination of the ASD program, municipalities lost that ability to use those cameras to control speed. We know that, anecdotally, from what we've heard, that speed has increased in our town. We hear from data that in other communities that have removed them, they're experiencing significant speed. So traffic calming is a critical way to slow traffic down, which is actually contrary to some of the foundational visions of others who want to move traffic seamlessly. So how do we actually coalesce those responsibilities? Well, that's our traffic calming program. So in addition to slowing traffic down, there's some other benefits from traffic calming. There's quality of life issues, there's pedestrian safety, there is noise reduction, and there's other elements of road safety that we've outlined that I'm going to address last in the report regarding road rationalization. So when the province eliminated the program, they implemented a supplemental opportunity called the Road Safety Initiative. In contrast to how much revenue was being generated through the ASD program that can support the community's traffic calming initiatives, this is a drop in the bucket, to be fair, but it's still an important fund that we want to apply for. One of the recommendations outlines to council that we will be applying for that and just making sure that you're aware of it. So the traffic calming strategy that we've developed, and again, the majority of all of that technical work was completed by SBA. Within the body of the report are some highlights, and they're specific to what is eligible through the funding program, which you have to be within 500 meters of where your camera was. So we went through the mapping to identify all of the tools and the locations where those traffic calming initiatives would be done. I will note that one traffic island was highlighted in this report for William and Nate. I did write that would be undertaken in August. I was on vacation last week and it started today. So I was a little bit behind the 8 ball there, but the critical thing about that is it will address a couple of things. The no left turns, which have been a real problem for us, and preempting that seems to have been difficult with signage. This should be a key component of that. And we've also joked today, but I think we're not joking, that we're going to put some flower box on it, and it's going to be our Manitoulin Island flower box. So we'll look at that. So the list of everything that we're recommending that's within the 500 meters is on page 4 and 5 of 11. Not going to get into that. Total budget on that eligible is about just over 1 million. And then when we get to the actual budget, I'm going to flip that to Carrie if you have questions with respect to all of what we have funding for from the pre-funding, what we have eligibility for from the application funding, and what we have in terms of our ASD funding received and to follow. So we've looked at an implementation schedule based on strategy for what would be happening in 2026, because we can use our existing money for that, and it's really still a robust program. And what other than the concrete island, which is underway within the 27 package, which would require some of the applications to be undertaken, engineering work to be done, and that program to be initiated. What is specific, and while you do not have to approve this, we decided as staff that it would be important to have you approve the literal location of the speed bumps. These are permanent speed bumps. And I know some of you had questions in terms of spacing or comments. And you might go, are you serious? 10 on one road? Yes, because 1 is inefficient, 2 is ineffective. And you have to have a continual number of them in order to slow that traffic. So you do not have speed, get over the hump, speed again. So just in terms of outreach, we didn't want the community to then contact you as members of council and say, why is this happening on my street? Are you aware of it? And you're gonna say, well, it was in a staff report, but I'm not really sure. So those locations are very prescriptive for that reason. So really, that's the heart of this report. In terms of the technical, what we've added to this, because we have so many questions as staff and we've had review with respect to locations of projects that are listed through the SBA analysis, is another issue. And that is called road rationalization. And how do you tie that into traffic calming? Because the literal ability to make decisions on roads is affected by the jurisdiction under which it's controlled by. So within the town of Shelburne, council has many questions to staff that involve Highway 124, which is actually County Road 124. I know we hear that, we're gonna correct that, not in like just the information. And then County Road 11, which runs adjacent to Fiddle Farm. So we've listed a number of things that jurisdictional adjustments would allow. And then we had a speeding adjustment for at the request of council to drop 11 and drop 124 down to 40 for a reason. It was more about the abutment and that intersection at 124 and 89, where we know schools will be walking in the future. We have a lot of pedestrian traffic there. We were part of we support Vision Zero in principle because we know we have the data that if you're a pedestrian and you're hit at 40, your chance of survival is a lot higher than if you're hit at 6. And we know that the demographic of that crossing tends to be a lot of seniors and children. So that's one thing. I'm going to read this list intentionally so that it's an awareness that you have better control over your road access for development. We deal with that a lot. We have situations where trails and linkages can be better managed, for example, in terms of hard surfacing and connections within a protocol that the town manages. We've identified in our project scheme crosswalks of PXOs, and many of those need to be on those roads that we do not control because we know that those linkages across the Fiddle Park, those linkages on 124 over to Fieldgate, those are also critical. And while we don't have the ability to do bike lanes or hard surfaces within our roadways for many reasons, there may be opportunities to do those within shared pedestrian corridors like sidewalks. And I know I skipped sidewalks, but sidewalks on certain roads, we know that we are hearing community input that they would like to see a sidewalk on 124 between Wansboro Way and down. And we have been as staff working on that. Again, that road is not within our jurisdiction, so there has to be some kind of different approach to get that, and most likely will not be all the way down, it will be down and over. So again, highly technical. Yeah. The other thing that I know our industrial partners and many of our largest employers in the town of Shelburne are dealing with or have had to deal with when the town has had to be, I guess, a conduit and voice to help advocate on that is half load. And within jurisdictions that we would be having oversight of those half loads, probably not in. And then the biggest issue, and this is where the planning side meets the technical engineering urban side, is we are aware that in other larger geographic counties or regional governments, there is a different lens taken when rural or county-wide roads integrate with an urbanization, and that the whole traffic calming design adjusts. So for example, when that road enters urbanized area, there's automatically an expectation or a design premise that there would be a sidewalk, there would be biking pedestrian support, there would be different intersectional adjustments, and the whole design changes from moving traffic seamlessly to pedestrian first. So again, that's in there, and that is really what is under the Fleet Streets type of planning approach to management. I know this is a big ask. I know that the road rationalization of the county was put on hold temporarily in February. We were not part of any road that was adjusted. I won't comment on consultation and how engaged we were or not. We would like more engagement going forward. So that request is to reopen up that conversation to make these formal requests. And I'm going to say what they are, that from County Road 124 from Highway 89 to 124 to Wansboro Way going up, It's from County Road 11 from the intersection of 189 all the way over to 30. And then, just to make it more complete, Fleet Street approach, we would go from side road 30 all the way over to Victoria. Okay, so that is not really technically usually what you'd consider within a traffic calming report, but it is important for us to achieve our goals and objectives in traffic calming, especially with the project list and the locations that SBA has identified within this MAPE doc. So that in the summary is it. You've got the locations of the speed bumps. I would like if Steve or Jim or then Carrie on the finances to address any questions on behalf of council, to share it with my colleagues.
I can maybe go first. The only thing I want to say is that the way it was set up as far as timing was for balancing what could be done this year and what money was already available. Then what funds we were applying funding, make sure that funds are placed for the second half through, and really maximizing that funding. I'm not going to bore council by reading every single one, but we have tried to break it out very clearly where we're doing speed bumps or cushions, as it's referred to in the report, so that way you can exactly see what street, what intersection, raise sidewalks to try and help similarly at intersections, where the PXOs were recommended, that it's 5 total, where the signage and sort of narrowing or having the and a lot of those already awesome. So I think it's something that council can go through and actually see there is a map back to try to highlight exactly where that full power is.
Just from a planning perspective, as you can see, logically, most of the development has been more around periphery of town, and in those locations, we're dealing with roads primarily that aren't in the town's jurisdiction, and just driving those roads, you can see how they look. They're open ditches, they sometimes have gravel shoulders. They're designed primarily to move traffic through the area as quickly as possible and to avoid intersections and other things that either slow traffic down or cause it to stop. And the local mindset is we need access to property, we need streets that can accommodate more than just cars. We need pedestrian safety. The more cars and higher speed that they're going, the more risk there is to pedestrians, and we need opportunities for people. But and when you start to add storm sewers and curbs and intersections and line painting and separated pathways, the safety increases, and that's something the traffic speed will. For anyone who's driving out in the countryside, automatically go a bit faster if there's less risk than when you're in town and you're surrounded by all these other physical features. So this would, the road rationalization is really a way to integrate roads and lanes better, because it brings that more wholesome picture of roads into the planning realm versus looking at it primarily. Well, the developer wants to do something on a road, let's make them for their section of road, fix it up and urbanize it and implement some improvements. It would have more comprehensive view. Let's prepare the roads so that they are aligned for the development and not an extra thought later. It is something that involves a lot of cost and design and all those things, but just bringing it up, integrated planning and engineering, locally controlled mindset.
And to that point, Steve, I mean, one of the things, I don't think it's any surprise, but and I'm sure others feel the same way, but one of the biggest irritants that I've had is that we haven't been able to make progress on solving that pedestrian safety issue along 124. I mean, if we are able to achieve this, have that ownership transfer to the town, setting aside the obvious, budget issues which council will have to deal with. I mean, just from a logistical point of view, we could be able to move pretty quickly to get that resolved, right?
Yeah, the other thing it enables is, while cost is one of the biggest challenges with that, is it's a different view of what the growth standard should be, and then actually enables growth related funding. So right now, on a town asset, you don't really have the means to collect development charges or build it into your capital plan. You're relying on another municipal government to do that. That then links it to county-wide development. It's just complicated. So it definitely brings more opportunity to do it sooner and with a local resource funding formula.
The only thought I had relative to that is, as Denise mentioned, the sort of more wholesome county-wide road rationalization project has kind of been put on ice for a while. There's a lot of issues at play there, but I still think that something like this could maybe happen regardless of what goes on with the rest of that project. So, but I think having a formal motion where council's blessing that transfer of ownership allows, those of us who are representatives at the county table to say, okay, well, let's figure this out and make it happen. Okay. Any other questions on this? Sorry, I didn't know if your hand was up or.
Oh, it is now, but I was waiting. So I see in the list of areas that you've got like those floppy boulders.
We like the floppy boulders.
You guys like them,
We do them.
but they don't slow traffic,
They do.
they don't.
We have to speed things to show what they,
Well,
you were speeding.
I wasn't speeding, I just happened to be in the areas that were. And First Avenue, where I was that day, they were not slowing. And I was to the point where I said, okay, I gotta get out of here because something's gonna happen, there's gonna be an accident, because it's just so fast. So I find in Greenwood, or Fiddle Park, sorry, where I live, they ain't slowing anybody down in that area that I can see.
So,
Through your worship, been there myself, have noticed that some people, they just won't slow down anyways, because some of the flexible rollers have taken a beating.
Yeah, I've seen that too.
They don't care about their vehicle, they're just gonna have anybody back out. But it does slow a lot of people down, and it just narrows the road. It throws off their perception of it, where it just forces them to slow down.
I get that, but there's still a lot that figured it out, and especially, I'm gonna say probably 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 years old, that figured out how to get there fairly quickly through there.
Tree where there is a North Fiddle Park Lane, there are recommendations in here for other measures to elevated intersections as well as the street crossings, that sort of thing, especially in the school area.
Well, I never put in more speed bumps and cushions in than we are the other ones, which I think is good. It's just, I just know that when I'm in the streets, especially in those areas, I don't see it slowing down. With the bigger vehicles, yes, so the guys with the F-150s and that kind of truck, they're slowing down.
I was gonna say, I mean, I know myself driving through, it definitely slows me down.
Yeah.
Because there isn't an awful lot of room.
There's not.
But a small vehicle, yeah.
Smaller
We'll
vehicles.
take that under advisement, in all fairness. And if there's flexibility with respect to some projects on what streets in particular, then we pivot,
I'd like to see that there was
certainly,
less,
we know that the speed cushion, because there's how they're situated, you will have no choice but like you have to slow down. And we took that as a serious tool, because council has told us that you consistently are concerned about the speed of this, let alone the fact that there could be fatalities. So we can, through Steve's team, we can reconsider some of those roads, and if the next project phase allows us to the 2027 undertaking, and including when we get more of our AFC money covered, as Carrie said, this is the projected amount, it doesn't mean all of that will be covered. We're pretty sure on what potential is, because if you don't pay, your ability to get your plate renewed is also, so there may be a timing issue, but usually at the end of that time, there will be some revenue that will support the So that's, okay, so we can look at some of those things and whether we need to rejig. I mean, the bollards are also seasonal.
Yes.
That's the other thing about that, and we also have to be aware of. We know fire was fine about the island because they said they could go around anything. And we also were aware of what we didn't want to impact our ability to do snow maintenance, particularly on roads where we have a lot of on-street parking seasonally, even when we have snow before delayed on-street parking.
Yes.
I will be here for that.
Good job.
Stay on it.
So if Mayor will do when he reads the recommendation, literally read out the streets for the speed bumps, the speed cushions, which were bumped, that would be appreciated.
And the speed cushions, you said a couple of times.
Are
permanent. So, yeah, so Jim, like, I know initially there was some concerns about snow plowing and everything else of that, but okay.
Once, through your worship, once that corners are there and they've been over them.
Yeah. Fine. You got worn down.
Just wanted to add that I had a good conversation with Rick Mann, who's part of the Ontario Bike Sound. And highly recommending anything we can do to slow traffic down with lines with Vision Zero. So I'll be at that summit in September as well.
Sure.
I can.
Excellent. Okay, well, at the CAO's request, I will read out the recommendation in all the form and then for a record. Be it resolved, the council receives report CAO 2026-03 regarding traffic calming strategy for information. And the council approves the following locations for permanent speed cushions. Anishinaabe Drive, Red Elm Road to Highway 24, County Road 24, 5 speed cushions. Berry Street, Fiddle Park Lane to Greenwood Street, 5 speed cushions. Fiddle Park Lane, Berry Street to Morden Street, 4 speed cushions. Greenwood Street, Main Street East to Fiddle Park Lane, 10 speed cushions. And Simon Street from Victoria Street to Main Street East, 10 speed cushions. And that a road safety initiative funding application be submitted by the town of Shelburne to implement traffic calming measures. And that, my favorite, the town of Shelburne requests the county of Dufferin as part of the county's road rationalization project also review the transfer of ownership to the town of Shelburne of road sections listed better fully support the town's commitment to complete streets, pedestrian and cyclist safety, as well as the town's planning and development. Those sections are County Road 124 from the intersection at Highway 89, 124 north, Wansboro Way, County Road 11 from the intersection at Highway 89, 124 south to Side Road 30, and Side Road 30 from second line to Victoria's. For a second of that, by Councillor Sample. Second by
Blank.
Okay.
Not that I wouldn't.
I'm just saying, he had
We're
his hand
saving
up.
a turn for you too.
He had his hand up, so.
All right, all in favor? It's carried. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Steve. Steve, thanks, guys. Okay. All right. You guys are sticking around for the next one, I assume, too. Next report is also from our CAO regarding the Shelburne Library Board structure and governance.
Thanks very much, Jennifer, Jennifer, the director. Clerk, so this report is the next phase of the review that staff has taken. We last reported back and all of the previous report linkages there. I don't want to have to take us back to every report, but we will try to highlight some of the connections between this report. So what we had reviewed is the library governance structure and the legislative authority for the board and whether or not it was a union library. Discovered that we don't believe it is. What we were trying to solidify and find is how did this unique structure come about, where there are representatives appointed by other municipalities on the Shelburne Public Library. We compare that to the trend, or I should say the trend of tradition, where other municipalities are exclusively that municipality is, the council of that municipality is the appointing authority through the process, whether or not that representative from another municipality, like is the case in Newtown, where they have service areas in the municipality that are authorized to have a rep, but is appointed by them. We also compared in the report how the town of Orangeville's public library is a regional library that provides service to many other communities that are surrounding them, but their board is exclusively represented by the town of Orangeville residents and the town of Orangeville council. So the report has sort of gone through that history. We looked at a number of different scenarios with respect to governance and provided the composition option. So the first option, which really in fairness is not an option, because it's inconsistent with the Libraries Act and the authority under which the representation is supposed to be comprised. And we did note that in previous reports, that not only did it resemble more of a union library in terms of functionality and representation, but you're not supposed to have that many elected officials on a board because that is outweighing the number of residential records. So theoretically, status quo or option one is not an option. It would be an inconsistency with the continuation of what is inconsistent. Doesn't make a lot of sense. But so what we also report highlighted in the report, which I know council has repeatedly asked staff about, is the budgetary alignment, and that about 56% is paid by the town of Shelburne, and the rest of that balance is paid by the other 4 municipalities that are represented on the board. What also changed in 2026 under council's approval, and I know the CEO referenced it, is we developed an MOU with respect to property and facility building, whereby the transfer of those capital projects or maintenance related costs under asset were almost exclusively becoming a function and a budgetary issue for the town of Shelburne. We established through our Director of Financial Services on that team that we have a new reserve. It started at 50,000 and we continue to contribute that annually plus pay the capital. So in the analysis that is primarily about the structure, and based on the fact that the current structure is not something that we recognize as formalized, that formalization is critical to the recognition of the structure legislatively. It's also critically responsible for the town of Shelburne to have an authority to do the appointment. That the structure that we recommended is option 2 at this time. What that is looking at is a hybrid. Option 3 is not a hybrid. Option 3 is the norm for the most part, but option 2 would correct the overrepresentation of elected officials. It would position the authority of the town of Shelburne Council to appoint to the library through the town's appointment process, but would provide representation opportunity for those municipalities that are serviced by the Shelburne Public Library as partners or through agreements, or alternatively through non-resident fees if that became supplement or fallback, that they would have a resident representation on the board. Where that resident representation was not applied for or determined to be through the town of Shelburne Council's authority, that positional or that representation would be defaulted to the town of Shelburne residential rep. The other option is that you wouldn't fill all 9, you have up to 7. And then I said option 3 is where you would have quite a drastic change, and that the representation on the board would be solely limited to 2 members of Shelburne Council up to, and then residential representatives, again, solely and exclusively managed and appointed with the authority of Shelburne Council. Option 2 is predicated on 2 assumptions. While the MOU is addressed, the operational capital cost being the exclusive function of the town of Shelburne going forward almost exclusively. There is an assumption under that model, option 2, that the proportional budgetary structure would remain. So if municipality ABC was paying XYZ right now, they would continue to pay that proportional amount to the budget, and by virtue of making that commitment, they would have representation of a residential rep on the board to make decisions about board functioning and operational decisions and all the great programs, et cetera, et cetera. It is also assumed that if you did not participate and continue past December 30th, 2026, you would default to the non-resident. So there's 2 things that could come of that. By that municipality no longer participating in the cost sharing proportional model for the budgetary operating cost, their residents would default to the non-resident fee, And currently the non-resident fee for Shelburne Public Library is $120. We've included in the list what the summary of other municipalities in Ontario are charging. It ranges from Owen Sound being 500 to some being 30. So that would be how the governance would have to be structured in order for this to make sense. You can't not fund the activity in order to achieve representation. So the finances could go a number of ways. We accommodated that in terms of the estimate at a very high level. So if certain municipalities decided that we no longer, because of the new structure that is being recommended, wish to participate on the board, their service agreement would continue based on an allocation, or alternatively, every time a resident that is from that municipality use the library under the current format where you have to have a library card to take off the books, not use the programs, they would be levied a cost. So we know that there could be a shift on top of what the CEO has told us in terms of the hope with their budget, just in terms of the base amount that Shelburne may have to pay with this adjustment. So we're not saying that this is revenue neutral. We are saying that there potentially might be an increase to the town of Shelburne, but that certainly is an outcome that is the result of a change in structure that somebody wants. So we're not naive that change is difficult, and we know that this is not necessarily a way that everybody would potentially like to see, but that's why staff would look at a hybrid. And so really your option one is not an option. So you have option 2 and 3, and we've recommended as a balanced hybrid in the in transition, and it could potentially be a pilot. We didn't put that on there, but I believe that the authority of Shelburne Council would mean if it wasn't working, you could tweak it accordingly with a couple of years of review. That's really the overview. Any procedural things with respect to legislative compliance, defer to Jennifer on that. And we do have our library CEO still with us. And I know that her background has been working with an organization in the past where the board was solely represented by that town, municipal and elected officials. That's the heart of it, and the recommendation is supported.
Good, thank you. Questions, comments?
This one's tricky now, because I was all for potentially recommending to go with the third option. But I'm worried about potential cost increases. Especially because, as we heard, we already are potentially going to be reviewing additional costs. So I'm just worried now, because if they get angry that we've decided to adopt, a model that almost every other library board follows, it's still such a drastic change that they might say, fine, we're out of here. And I get it, they're gonna have to pay, the residents will then have to pay, or we will have to charge the municipality, or however that's gonna go, the non-resident fee. But I just don't know if that would equate what they currently pay just to help support the function of the library. Right, because some people may be like, okay, fine, then I don't want the library card at all. So then we're not receiving as many non-resident fees, and then the whole of what they currently contribute goes down drastically as well, which then means Shelburne has to increase. So I'm a little torn.
My thought would be that option 2 is probably the best spot plan at this point. Denise said a couple of times, change is difficult. We all know that. Of course, quite a bit of change in the last 4 years, and sometimes that has to be done a little more gradually than we'd like to see. But I think option 2 does a couple of things, and it gets us moving in the right direction. But it also, kind of gives a nod to the tradition that we've had there in terms of, contribution, cooperation with those other partners. So I'm most comfortable with option 2, because it's not a complete 180 pivot from where we are, but it gets us on the right path.
I would prefer if we do choose option 2 that we definitely highlight as a pilot. I think we need some time to see if it works, and we need to be able to have an out if it doesn't.
And I think, Jennifer, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Shelburne Council today would have that out at any time by changing.
It doesn't stop the other councils to not have their own individual that they've chosen as far as council to be resident representative that is applying. Right?
Yeah.
If they're a resident of the township, then they can apply,
Yeah, yeah, of
right?
course,
So
it
they may
would
be
be our,
encouraging,
well,
they may
council
be
of the
encouraging
D's.
this, right?
Yeah.
So I know that it's 2 members assigned by Shelburne, and then there's representatives from each municipality to fill up the rest of the seats. Doesn't stop them. They want a representative. We're going to put an application in this person's name. Whether they're chosen, that's a different story.
right,
Right, when you look at costs, like even with, option 2, the municipalities, I think the bigger concern is going to be that this group of people are going to bind them to a budget that they have no control.
right,
That's the reality.
Yeah.
Regardless of if you go option, 2 or 3, it's the same. Then you're not completely out, or you just accept it for what it is.
Yeah.
But, from what was presented tonight by the library, it's pretty clear that there's a return on investment that many have for years not necessarily accepted or realized. So I think option 2 gives you the median ground, and if it doesn't work, you still have option 3 after.
yeah, and that was my torn between the two as well, because I don't wanna be that municipality, like, we need to have good neighbors, right? Like, we need to be a good neighbor. So I don't wanna just, say, too bad, contribute to the library, but you don't get any say. So even at that, even if I went with option 3, I would say, is there a way to create some form of an advisory where the other municipalities could, once a year or something like that, have a conversation with the CAO or the CEO and, bring their concerns or their questions or whatever. So it's not like I wanted it just like bye, you know what I mean? But it's just, yeah, exactly, right? Like, just comment, yeah. But it's just, for me, Shelburne contributes so much that it's hard when you're looking budgetary wise or whatnot to have the other municipalities, again, I want their say, but I don't know, maybe not as much say, you know what I mean?
Certainly, if there's something for them to ask or comment on, or there still is a system in place that exists.
Yeah,
Like, the library's there to take whatever questions that need to be had.
yeah,
And remember, there was, without mentioning which, but there was municipalities that said, we don't want to put towards capital.
yes,
We're out of the capital.
yes,
Well, that's not growing the base. That's not growing what needs to be done.
Yeah.
So, I think they've already said their piece. We're not willing to do this, so somebody has to, and this represents the change of what we have to do.
yeah, cause I think that was my main concern with the MOU that we created, right? Because I'm like, what I don't understand is you want now Shelburne and Shelburne residents to spend 100% of the capital costs. But, and I get it, you're contributing, but your people are coming in and they're using the elevator, and they're going to the bathroom, and they're flushing the toilet, and they're, so there are things that they are using that, your current contributing amount is not now gonna necessarily cover, right? You're gonna be covering more of the operational part of it. And so that was my big hang up on the MOU. Was I was like, it's kind of not fair that you guys still get to come in and again, use our elevator and use our, facility as a whole, but aren't now necessarily contributing to the wear and tear that your people are going to still put on the library, right? You're putting that on Shelburne.
You can't look at it that way, because look at all our parks.
Oh,
We spend
yeah, I
Millions of
know.
dollars on all our parks, everybody uses them, right? So
Yeah,
we get
yeah.
payback on those, so.
That's true. The splash pad.
Yeah, exactly,
I know.
right, so.
I know. I guess it was just one thing that I was like,
You just can't.
it's one more thing that,
Yeah.
Shelburne as a whole, people who live here who pay municipal taxes have to kind of fund. Well, there's a benefit to the municipalities around us that they don't have to fund, right? And I was just like, so,
Hopefully when they're here using the library or the parks, they're spending money too.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and supporting our local, of course, right? And I see both sides of it, but sometimes I just get a little frustrated and I'm, assuming other probably Shelburnites do too, where they're like, why will we have to always be the one paying for everything, right? So, yeah.
So really, the heart of the process that we decided to was strictly upcut.
Yeah.
It recognized a structure that wasn't right.
Yes.
And that because of that review, correction was required. Because it was not legislatively compliant with how a board is structured, and as we said, is not a union public library. And usually if it's a union public library, that word union public library is usually on the building.
Right.
So we've gone through all that, we exhausted that, and the reason we're here and we sort of stripped out the inequities and some of the other things, we recognize that, the MOU is probably the start of this analysis moving forward. But there currently is a lot of review being undertaken by our municipal neighbors, particularly to the south of us, regarding frameworks, equity, and taxation, where one municipality's regional approach to provision of service is being heavily subsidized by that local taxpayer, and there's no equity for that.
Yeah.
And that imbalance is common in smaller particular. So to the parks, there's a great issue. To other facilities where there's an imbalance and the non-resident fee is minuscule in terms of even representing recoverable.
Yeah.
All of those things, hopefully in the future, need to be addressed with service delivery reviews, as opposed to like high level statements without the data to support what that subsidy is and how those operational capacities need to be supported or not, and then justification. That's all part of transparency and accountability. And I see that there's going to be more service areas in the pathway to want to, because of the scarcity becomes the reality, which is becoming more so every day for us with the lack of DCs. We're going to have to start, and I think somebody made a comment about the efficiencies that come through systems, and those aren't painful. They are not punitive. They are simply productive, and they put a lens on things that have never been lensed. And you find that the status quo or the way we've done things, there's opportunity to make changes. So I don't want to make this about, I know I said this is difficult, there's change, but it's a required change.
Yeah.
And it's been, I think now, 2018, when we first dove into this.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's taken that long.
Yeah, and not to restate what I said before, I in my mind, option 2 gets us to where in terms of that compliance and that necessary change with the least amount of disruption for now.
Well, you answered both of my questions in your speech. Yes, but I agree, option 2 is probably our best bet to get to, as long as down the road, we look at all the serviceables and everything that go along with it to make sure that how we fund it gets funded the right way, you know what I mean? So if they decide, everybody decides they're backing out and it's 100% Shelburne, then how do we fund all this? Strategically, we have to start looking at how out of town fees are applied and what they're applied to and what they're applied on and all that kind of stuff. So as long as all that's taken care of, I'm okay with option 2.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know Shannon addressed it, but the collaboration since she's joined the team with town of Shelburne staff has been like 7,000%. There's such a connection between our recreation development, our events program staff, our communication staff, that energy with respect to sharing of information, which is only, but I have a feeling some of that is positive because that outreach is now reaching a larger audience. So maybe some of the membership is a result of that community connections, your presence at events, our sharing of this information through our social media, that's all positive. And in many ways, as we've talked, there may be things in our recreation plan, for example, that we won't need to do because we're focused on outdoor, we're focused on this, because with this partner, there's a better symbiosis that's the correct word, in terms of that non-silo. And that lack of siloing has certainly been a benefit to the community. And I think we're gonna continue to drive that kind of relationship and partnership in everything we do. And the awareness of what they provide and how well that's received for the community is something that in the case of a funding envelope gap, we would have to just.
I think we've talked this,
Yeah.
Yeah.
make a decision, if somebody wanna make a motion, Councillor Sample for option 2?
Yeah.
Okay, so seconder for that. That will be Mayor Hall. All right, so the motion will be to receive the report and then option 2, which we've discussed at length, be adopted. And that all representatives serving on the Shelburne Public Library for the next term of Shelburne Public Library Board commencing around January 1st, 27 be directly appointed by the Town of Shelburne Council, Town's committee and board appointment process, and that an establishing bylaw for Shelburne Public Library Board be prepared by town staff for the consideration and approval of council by the end of September 2026. All in favor? It's carried. Okay, good. Thank you. Good discussion. All right, and the last item is a bylaw for the town to execute an agreement between the town and Integrated Maintenance and Operations Services, Inc., which is the annual agreement that we enter into. Are there any questions on that one?
It's just
Yeah.
pretty straightforward.
Do it every year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Motion for that. By Wagner, seconded by Sample, all in favor? It's carried. All right. So we do have one notice of motion this evening from Councilor Wagner. We don't want to consider that at the next meeting.
I don't know, what's the procedure for that? Did I submit it in time where it can be voted on tonight, or do we have to wait till the next meeting?
Pretty much in order to go to today, you do. Yeah.
Okay.
Otherwise it is first.
Okay, yeah, I mean, it's whatever you guys wanna do, it's kind of, it's not anything super sensitive, right? Like, it's not where I feel like you guys would need like a couple weeks to ponder over it, but if you need to, I'm okay with that too. Cause I'm.
In your hours.
Well,
literally.
I've been an advocate to say that if you submit a motion, we should have the time needed to review it, right? But with this one, it's pretty, it's not anything crazy, you know what I mean?
I'm fine, so.
Yeah.
Is there any objection to considering it tonight?
Okay.
No, there we go.
Oh, like it's.
Is there a seconder then for Councilor Wagner's motion? Councilor Bouchard. Okay.
And I'll just briefly sort of speak to it, I mean, it, you know, obviously it's a little bit lengthy, I don't really think I have to read the whole thing, people can read it. But it's just for the fact that, you know, we're growing, and with our growing town, we need diagnostic services and things of that nature, and, you know, it's great that we're getting a new office that's opening up with, you know, bone density, x-rays, ultrasounds, things like that. So to support that, you know, we used to, when we were a smaller town, have life labs, operating from, I think it was 8 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon. And then all of a sudden they just decided, I guess, it wasn't as busy as they thought it was going to be, and they removed 2 hours. So I put it on myself to be like, okay, let me just see if I can email somebody and ask, how do I try to advocate to get some hours back? I spoke with Claudette, and she's our sort of regional manager, I guess you could say. And we had a little bit of a lengthy sort of conversation, and she said, to be honest, she's already been advocating for this. But what she needed from us was just some formal support, right? Community support, having people in the community email her to just give them their, you know, concerns over the lack of, you know, extra hours or you know, ability to get in. I mean, I know myself now, if I get in there on a Saturday, it's crazy. Like, it is packed, and before I could just kind of walk in, 20 minutes, you sit there and you're out. Last time I believe I waited almost 2 hours. So, you know, this is just something that she can't make the decision on. She has to have statistical data that, you know, from requests and things of that nature, not only from Shelburne, but maybe even municipalities around us, because we all know that the municipalities around us are coming in to use the life labs. So, you know, that helps her create a case to her bosses, which also helps to create a case to the province. Because there's multi-levels in, you know, something as simple as adding a few hours. So, we did also discuss a little bit about expansion as well, but the first priority would be to just try to get at least to 2 o'clock back. Ideally 4 or 4:30, and do a full day every day. So yeah, so this is just sort of a formal, you know, we can say the council supports this as well, if we can share this with the municipalities around us and maybe have it on their, you know, communications, where they could pull it and say, hey, yeah, you know what, our community uses this Life Labs, and we would actually like to support Shelburne in their advocacy for extended hours.
And it'll get circulated in something else that maybe on Thursday, we can just mention to the,
Yeah.
at least the
County.
immediate surrounding municipalities here.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. So yeah, like it's nothing crazy, but it's just us saying we want this for our community.
Perfect, okay. Good. Very good.
Thanks, guys.
All right, communications. Councilor Gashari.
Number 4 and number 13, first of all, 4, I had actually put forward a motion on this and kind of withdrew it because Orangeville, lo and behold, has passed the motion already, so this would just be a motion of support for the county to undertake in a study of the advantages and disadvantages of any potential application for a data center. Just in regard to its consumption of water resources, electricity demands, municipal servicing, land use, et cetera. So if we can give a letter of support to that motion and address it at county.
Yeah, so we'll move motion of support, is there a seconder?
Sure.
Wagner? Okay,
Water support.
all in favor? Carried, okay, perfect.
And
13.
Just it'll be the letter from the Solicitor General informing us that our 2027 calendar year our costs will be could go up as high as 11% compared to 2026 for servicing. I just think we need to address, or at least, you know, be aware that we're not in control of necessarily coverage or costs aside from the contracts we entered into. So that's a bit of a sticker shock, and
And it's something to consider if we need an enhancement.
Yes,
Like,
yeah,
we discussed
yeah.
about an enhancement being on average around $200,000, which is almost 2% of our budget.
Yeah.
So,
I just it's just a
yeah,
it's
concerning.
a bit of an alarming
Number.
information. I was gonna say just an alarming information update from our Solicitor General.
Yeah.
Okay, yep, the highlight, okay.
That's it for me.
Anything else, anybody?
Yeah.
Okay, can I get a motion then to receive the remaining items? Samples, seconded by all in favor? Carried, affirming by law. Wagner and. All right, Sherry, all in favor? Carried, and a motion to adjourn. Councilor Sample, seconded by Councilor Wagner.
You made it.
I swear to God, I'm not getting